We've got entrepreneurs, business owners, some of the biggest athletes in the world, breaking down the key lessons, learnings, takeaways for the first 10 eps. Mr. Macro Mike, from selling pub crawls in Vegas to a multi-8-figure entrepreneur. Resilience in the face of adversity. Big Matty German, Socceroos player, played over 300 professional caps. Pressure is a privilege. Big Emil Jurisic, founder of NGU Real Estate. They did over $3 billion worth of sales in 2024 alone. The guy's just an animal. He just wants it. He wants it so bad, it's not funny. Big Jimmy Ibrahim, in COVID, he lost almost $1 million. You look at Jimmy now, and he built that 24 property portfolio. Anyone can come back from massive setbacks, no matter how much you lose, no matter how much you are in the dumps. Big Jeffy Jow, at $40 million a year business to eating hand grenades. Dangers of the ego, how purpose drives long-term performance. Big Peter Hull, Fitstop founder, strategy of scaling to 160 plus locations in 4 countries, systemizing for scalability. Avi Khan, for starting and scaling 9 businesses, finding and empowering the right people. You can train anyone as long as they have a good attitude. Saya Sakakibara, she won the Olympic gold medal at Paris last year for BMX racing. So much of what she did was actually overcoming fear, even though shit can be scary, but it's pushing through and performing regardless. That is so powerful. 10 brutal truths I wish I knew in my 20s. Cost of inaction is higher than you think, so take action. Doing the 1%ers that are gonna build that momentum and build that compounding interest to keep you moving forward and push you into that next field of the top 1% as well. G'day listeners, and welcome to another Top 1% podcast where we dive into the minds of the world's highest performers. We've got entrepreneurs, business owners, some of the biggest athletes in the world that we've come in and interviewed for you guys, the first 10 episodes of the Top 1% podcast, and that is what today's episode is all about. I'm gonna be breaking down the episodes that we've done so far from episode 1 through to episode 10, a little bit of a celebratory run for the first 10 episodes done, breaking down the key lessons, learnings, takeaways, in my opinion, from these first 10 episodes, and giving you guys as much value back in bite-sized pieces for the first 10 eps. Guys, I'm gonna jump straight into this thing, and remember, the whole idea of this is to glean as much information out of this thing as we can, and to give you those bite-sized chunks that you can practically go out and implement into your own business journeys, entrepreneur journeys, or as an athlete, high performer, whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're chasing. The whole idea of this thing is to help you level up and go to that next level and go and achieve those milestones that you might be chasing. Now, guys, to dive straight into episode 1 was obviously my own personal story that I recorded with Big Jimmy Ibrahim. We obviously ran through my upbringing, everything that effectively shaped me into the high performer that I am today, and the success that I had, even as an early, from a sporting career through to business. Things like when I got burnt by a buyer's agent, how that shaped and how that changed my journey through my career, and obviously the transition from being an investor to being a buyer's agent, and now running one of the largest buyer's agencies in Australia and performing at an extremely high level. We ran through the different things that effectively built the resilience during that time frame, the different investing methodologies that I worked through, the trials and tribulations, and everything that I overcame during that journey, to effectively reach both the top 1% of business owners and obviously the top 1% of property investors in Australia. And to throw a little bit into the equation for anyone who doesn't know my story all that well, the top 1% of property investors in Australia own 6 or more properties. At time of recording, I had over 100 properties in the portfolio. So the real, lessons, takeaways, journey through this whole thing, what we broke down in that is pretty much going as raw and real as I've ever been in my own journey, breaking that thing down. So in my opinion, having a listen back through this thing and pulling out the key takeaways, one of the really, really key things, obviously, that was instilled in me from my family from a very young age was a strong work ethic that was put into me by my parents. Both being working class, dad originally a copper, mum originally a high school teacher, then bought a business, ran that 7 days a week farm, and effectively being a kid on that farm. When you're a farm boy, farm kid, you are working on that farm every single day as well. It doesn't matter if you got school, it doesn't matter if you got soccer on the weekends, you're working on that farm every single day. And I think the lessons I took out of that and the hard work and just like the piece of just having to do it all the time, it just became second nature for that hard work. Now, the other things we ran through within that as well is like, even if you didn't have that as a direct upbringing, the fact of looking at how you can apply that to everyday life, like how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're putting that application in, and even if you didn't have that super tough, hard upbringing, but you can apply that still today, regardless of what age you are, to make sure that you're getting after it, you're chasing it, and you're not making excuses. Now, for those of you who did have a bit of a rough upbringing, potentially had potentially had to work harder, you had resilience, you had these challenges that came up as a kid, what you'll find as we run through almost all of these stories is every single high achiever and high performer that we've interviewed to date, they all go through the same thing. So if you've got anything, if you've got a chip in your shoulder, if you've got, you've got hectic past or whatever in terms of how you grew up and what you went through and the hardships, you got to embrace that stuff, because embracing that stuff unlocks a new level and helps you go to that next level as well. So I found that really cool to kind of really reflect on with everyone, that we interviewed to date. Literally everyone went through that, from an upbringing perspective. The discipline, the sacrifice, and the mindset, and not wavering from my goals, I think was the next key takeaway. The discipline and the sacrifice. I was an extremely low income earner, and I knew that property was going to be my vehicle. So the focus that I had on saving my money, not blowing my money, staying extremely disciplined with it. The sacrifice piece of not going out there and buying a nice car when all my mates are buying a nice car. Not going out there and blowing 5-10 grand on a motorbike because all my mates had motorbikes, all these sorts of things. I didn't travel for 6-7 years of my journey and of my life. And in reality, all these things were stacking the deck and stacking the wins for me to enable me to keep pushing forward, moving forward, building my property portfolio, which in turn and in essence built me into what I do today, and obviously what I've now exploded with from a property portfolio perspective as well. So again, guys, discipline and sacrifice. You want to enter the top 1% in anything in life, you have to have discipline and you have to sacrifice to an extent on all these things. And you have to have that strong mindset that you're going to keep doing this thing and not get stuck, not get caught up. That is how you keep pushing forward, and that is how you win. The next big takeaway I had from the episode, and one of my favorite sayings to date, is every mistake or loss is only a lesson. That is purely what it is. It just depends on what the price tag attached with that lesson is. But it's only a loss, or it's only a mistake. It's only a loss if you don't learn from it. As long as you learn from it, and it doesn't matter what it cost you. It's just the price of that lesson. And sometimes those lessons are bloody expensive. But sometimes the most expensive lessons are the most prudent ones, and the ones that will push you more than anything else. Again, I look at one of the biggest mistakes, one of the biggest lessons that I had in my 20s was being burnt by another buyer's agent. I got absolutely fleeced, burnt me 10 grand when I was netting like 50 something grand a year. So it's a huge amount for me to get fleeced at that age. But the lessons that I learned from it, and the drive and the hunger and the fire it put in my belly, that's what I took away from it. So there's a lot of people out there, they get hung up, they get caught up on the different things that affect them, that have happened to them, or that they've made decisions. And those things have happened to them because of the decisions that they've made. You have to own those mistakes. And at the end of the day, you are exactly where you are from a direct result of the actions that you've taken. There is no one else to blame. It is always on you. And you have to embrace that, and you have to face that, and always move forward regardless of what has happened, and keep pushing forward if you want to get great results and achieve great things. The next big thing for me, and the biggest takeaway for me, the final takeaway that I'll put from my episode as well, is the importance of mentors and coaches. For myself, when it came to the footy career when I was younger, when it came to business, when it came to all these different things, you need a high level mentor or coach that has done what you want to do to achieve what you want to achieve. If you're using someone that's not even at your level, or maybe only a couple of deals in front of you, or they've only got a slightly bigger business than yours or something like that, or sometimes they've never even had a business, are they really the right person to be coaching you? Are they really the right person to be giving you advice? And whether that's a buyer's agent for sourcing property and building a portfolio, have they done what you want to do? Have they got a 10, 20 property portfolio? Have they got the ability to retire from property and built it before they run a buyer's agency or not? And so I think there's that side of things. Then also, obviously, from a coaching side, has that person done what you want to do? You look at bodybuilding coaches out there. We recorded with Hattie Boydell on, and that app will be coming out in a couple of weeks as well. 3-time world champion bodybuilder. When you go and train and you're going to compete and you're going to prep for a comp, do you want to get trained by a world champion bodybuilder or someone down at your local gym? What level do you want to go at? Do you want to compete at the highest level? Or do you just want to compete and have a crack? And I think the quality of your coaches and the quality of your mentors will determine the quality of your outcome. So I cannot stress that enough. Do not work with someone who has not achieved what you want to do, because you will not get the results that you are going after. Next episode, which is one of my favorites. He's an absolute legend of a bloke, and I'm very blessed to be able to call this guy a mate. We live just around the corner from each other. We both have the same dailies in a V8 Defender. It is big Mr. Macro Mike. He's an absolute champion, and his episode was from selling pub crawls in Vegas to a multi-8-figure entrepreneur. Mike shares his journey of his, crazy journey, what he had in the UK and when he had to leave the UK because of a very toxic breakup and, his space being, completely invaded by something that had happened from that perspective. He moved to Vegas. He tried to make it work. He found himself, selling pub crawls. It's a pretty crazy story in terms of the opportunity he supposedly was getting offered to move over there and to start working from there. That didn't work out from a PT perspective. He ended up selling pub crawls in the main streets of Vegas and did exceptionally well out of it. Now, his story from there, he had his work visa a couple of times. He ended up having to move to Australia. So he's moved, literally, he lives on the Gold Coast now, and he runs obviously Macro Mike, which is the protein brand, the all vegan, all natural protein brand from that perspective as well. And pretty much his story of the setbacks he had through that thing, the things he had to push through, the trials, the tribulations. He had an extremely hectic event that happened with his father that was an alcoholic through it, through his childhood, and pretty much having to witness that and how all that played out has really shaped the human and the man he is. And again, you'll find with almost all these stories, these trials, these tribulations, these things that happen to so many of us at a young age can shape you into being an incredible human. It can really shape a journey that is destined for massive things, but it can also go the other way. So that's why I say you got to make sure you embrace that side of things. You got to make sure you embrace those things, again, like the chip on the shoulder, the past things that have happened in your life. How can you use those to empower you, to strengthen you to go to another level and use them to enter the top 1% of whatever field it is that you're looking to enter or chase or dominate? Key takeaways from me from Big Macro Mike: resilience in the face of adversity. He had a lot of things thrown at him. He had a lot of failures early in the piece. It took him years to get Macro Mike up and running. He faced people taking the piss out of him for he'd go sell his pub crawls in Surfers Paradise during the day, and then he'd whip up his protein mixers at night, and he'd have the industrial bloody concrete mixer in his kitchen in Surfers, and everyone thought he was a drug dealer because he was taking all these supplies up to his room, but he was mixing cookies, and then he'd go post them off and everyone take the piss out of him. But he kept going hard, and he's been in the game now for almost a decade doing this thing, starting it literally from his kitchen to now a massive, massive factory, massive amount of employees and everything as well, and build it into one of the biggest brands of nutrition in Australia today. Now, the other huge takeaway alongside that is the consistency and the work ethic that came with that as well. He, worked his butt off, kept building it, didn't let, different little setbacks and pieces here and there really stop him. He kept pushing forward. He didn't allow those little setbacks, big setbacks, little setbacks, everything in between. He didn't allow it to derail him. He kept pushing forward. And now, like I said, one of the biggest nutrition brands in Australia. And he also won the Food and Beverage Young Entrepreneur of the Year as well in 2024. That's where I actually met the big man. And so he's absolutely kicking goals in his field and still only young. I think he's 33, 34, whatever it is now, just doing exceptionally well for himself and building something, really impressive from there, and doing it, alongside his lovely wife. The other big thing as well was like navigating changing landscapes. I think within here is like the ability to adapt and to move around and really take on different projects, and just being able to be malleable with what's changing in an industry, and providing a niche product, but then a product that 95% of people wouldn't opt for. And I know myself personally, he's got a vegan product, and for the last 5 years, 90% of the time I run carnivore, so I don't even use. I eat very, very little veggies, but what I find is when I come off, how clean I feel using that thing. And this is the thing, like it's such a niche product using something like that, but he still found, even though like 95% of people wouldn't use that actual product, how can he target and how can he dominate in that 5% that will, and take a really nice market share from that side? And that's what he's done so well, and continues to do really, really well, and continues to push and understands the importance of branding and then, client retention, all those different things as well. He's seriously client focused, and it came off the back of obviously what he needed himself as a competitor and as an athlete when he used to bodybuild back in the day, making a product that was specific for him and then being able to continually sell that to other people who face the same problems and challenges. Macro Mike was one of my favorite apps. It was an absolute cracker, and it is, I think, as of right now, I think it is the number 2 most downloaded episode to date from the Top 1% podcast as well. So I highly recommend you go back and listen to that one as well. Next up, we had Big Matty German, Socceroos player, played over 300 professional caps. I knew Matty from a very young age. We actually went to school together. We went to an elite sports high school down in Sydney. His journey of going, playing there, training there with myself, going to the AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport, heading over to Europe at a very young age. The amount of setbacks and like grind he had to go through trying to crack it in Europe, eventually not being able to effectively make it over there, got sent back home. Was signed very, very young professional contracts in Australia. One of the youngest to start signing pro contracts as well. Entered the A-League at a very young age and then started doing exceptionally well from that perspective. Ended up playing all around the world, played a bit in Europe, he played a bit in Asia, Saudis as well, got a nice pay packet after the World Cup, Big Matty. And I think like one of the biggest things that we really saw with his journey as well was the resilience piece. And we really dived into that. You know, his old boy put a lot of pressure on him, but what he found and it was really that pressure bred the hunger to really perform. And I could really resonate with that when we had that conversation because it sounded like our fathers were very, very similar in terms of how they pushed us as kids and as players and how that sort of really translated and transpired over into being an athlete. And for him, moving on to the professional athlete stage and again, eventually playing for the Socceroos as well. There's some pretty cool moments in his journey as well that were really, really powerful. Gave me goosebumps in a couple of in that episode a couple of times as well. Particularly that World Cup qualifier back in Sydney in front of 90,000 people to make the World Cup. I believe it was in 2018 as well. Absolutely massive. The sacrifice he showed during that piece, again, the sacrifice, the dedication, controlling the controllables. So like the things that he could actually take care of and control within his own journey. So that could be, his athleticism, working on the things that were his deficiencies in the sport, his recoveries, all these different things, his mindset, keeping himself bulletproof. He was always looking for the 1%ers to keep himself leveling up. And I think obviously played a massive part in eventually being picked for the Socceroos as well and having many caps within there too. One of the key quotes he kind of gave out within this podcast as well was that pressure is a privilege. And I think what people have to understand is if you're living a mundane life or, you're living an average life, but you're wanting something big, just remember when you're chasing something big, you're going to get pressure. It is going to get tough and it is simply part of the process. And just remembering that pressure is a privilege. So if you're starting to push, whether you're building a property portfolio, whether you're trying to be an athlete, whether you're trying to build a business, pressure is a privilege. And the more that you do it, the harder things will come at you. And then what you find is that the shit that was like in your year one, that was really, really difficult. By the time you get to year 2 or 3, you look back and you're like, oh, that's easy now. But back in year 1, it was extremely stressful and hard and all the rest of it. And by the time you get to years 2 and 3, you have new problems and new pressures and new stresses. And in reality, what will happen is when you get to years 4 and 5, you look back and you'll say the same thing. But pressure is a privilege, right? And every single time you have anything like this, whether it's in a sport, being an elite athlete and building, or whether you're building a business, building a portfolio, all these different things, the pressure is a privilege because you are in that environment and in that circumstance is going to allow you to potentially get something better and build something better and achieve something better than you potentially ever have today as well. So I really like that, that quote from Matty. And one of the other cool things just before we wrap on Big Matty as well was preparing for life after sport. He was very vocal, very very clear on the fact that his career is he's probably got a couple of years left in the tank, and he's been preparing for it. He's been investing. He's been looking in different avenues, and I think like the sophistication piece from that as well, looking to move forward, looking at like the different things. And like any athletes that are out there, listening to this thing, you've just got to remember that the sporting life doesn't last forever. The big bucks don't last forever. And you're either getting educated so you can go off and do something else that'll make you good money in that time frame, or you're trying to set yourself up to be in a position to make decent money, once you come out of that side of things as well, or invest so you've got money at the back end of it too. So I really like that. I really like that he also invested on the side and really worked on himself to be able to, have a life after sport and still be able to earn good coin. Now, one of the most downloaded episodes to date and one of the really powerful ones that I probably got the most feedback on out of every episode to date from the Top 1% podcast was Big Emil Jurisic, founder of NGU Real Estate. They did over $3 billion worth of sales in 2024 alone. He's a $100+ million man. He's got multiple Lamborghinis. He's just bought another Ferrari. He's loaded. I recorded this podcast in his house, Hacienda up in Brizzy, $25 million home. And actually really nice guy. Like he spent an hour with me before we recorded the potty, showing me his house, showing me his cars. We started up his Aventador. We couldn't even hear each other speak. It was so bloody loud, literally just idling and just like humble guy for someone who's worth so much and who's gone through so much shit. grew up in Yugoslavia, his portion obviously being Croatia of the Yugoslavia when they were going through the war, migrated to Australia after the war. But even during the war, he was making candles. He found this wax factory. You'd get the wax, he'd find the little wick, and he'd build these candles, and then he'd sell them at a stall. And he joked that he created Uber Eats because he was the first one to do delivery candles. He was like an Uber candle, delivering candles to the people in these war zones. He'd go around running between the buildings, and it's just a crazy, crazy story with the amount of shit that happened to him in that upbringing, in that environment, and the resilience piece that it taught him during that as well. And again, the entrepreneurial side that came from it and spurned from it as well. The one thing I really found, and I think a lot of people found that about Emil as well, the guy's just an animal. He just wants it. He wants it so bad it's not funny. And I asked him the question, and I often get asked this question as well, like, why are you still going so hard? Why is it still so important to you? And he's like, man, what else am I going to do? I love this thing. I want to push hard. I love challenging myself. I love creating new things. Like, that is his passion. And it's not always, I think the important thing is it's not always about the money. It's what you actually get out of the drive, the energy, creating something, building something, supporting people, whether it's, your staff or whether it's your clients or whatever it is. And I could really feel that coming through from him. And I think everyone else could as well, because out of all the episodes I've had, I typically get, a good solid 10 to 20 messages per episode, feedback on apps, love this, love that, or whatever. Emil's, I reckon I would have got over 100 messages off the back of this thing. And this was episode number 4, right? So this is within a month, 4th episode dropped, guys. And this thing was absolutely went off its head. So anyone that hasn't listened to that episode, if there's anyone that wants to get some serious motivation to go and achieve big things and to realize you're probably potentially not pushing as hard as you could, I would recommend to go back, have a listen to Emil's episode. Some of the huge takeaways that I had from Emil as well, the real hunger to succeed. So coming over as an immigrant, living in housing commission. It's funny, he posted the other day about having a $6,000 Toyota Corolla. It was funny because Marty Fox, who's a big real estate agent in Melbourne, he commented, mate, I had the same car, and I looked at it, and that was my same first car as well, an 88 Corolla. I think those boys had an 89 Corolla, and it was just funny that, like, he had that and he's posted it compared to like all these supercars and all these different cars he's got, in the garage. But it's not a flex. It's just like how far he has come and what he's worked for to create that. And I think it's really, really cool coming in, having that hunger and not letting that hunger go. And I can relate to that so much. And I really loved his passion, his energy, and how much he wanted it and get after it as well. For him, leveraging the hardship as motivation. He'd been through some really hard times, even when he was in Australia, had some losses, financially as well, but really wanted to create something massive and keep pushing forward and rebuild himself. And he didn't let setbacks, adversity, hardship defeat him, or his lovely wife. They got back up, they pushed hard, and they recreated, and now they're bigger and better than ever and absolutely killing it as well. Massive visionary as well. So when you listen to Emil's app, the biggest thing I kind of took away from it, and so often, like I love interviewing people because I love to see other people on the other side that are doing other things and how they're doing them and all the rest of it. And I speak to Emil and the vision that he has for all these different things he wants to create. He's got One Life Club, he's got the brokerages, he's got all these different things. He's bolt-ons that he builds onto NGU, developments, everything he does from that perspective. He's never just resting on his laurels. And some people would say you need to hyper-focus on one thing. And I do agree with that when you first start. But I think the cool thing is like he's figured the niches that can add massive value as well, and like figured out how to build them successfully, and then he bolts them on and he builds it and he goes hard. So the vision that he has and what he's trying to do, and even creating the community of other people as well to achieve things to a very, very high standard in the One Life Club. It was really cool to kind of sit across from him and have that energy in front of me as well. One of the other huge things, so then my final point for Emil, which has become extremely prevalent in recent years, is the importance of building the branding and the visibility in business. So he's an extremely active bloke on social media, really getting out there very, very regular. Every single day you'd see him post 7-8 times a day. He's got a massive following as well. And one of the biggest things that is really important to him is just knowing how important branding is and going behind it, going all in on it, not being, not missing a day, just going hard. And that's worked really, really well for him, in building his brand, and especially in the sales department in terms of how he built out what he did as well, the real estate sales department. And he's just so, adamant that is such an important piece of what he has built and has really contributed in a massive way to his success. as well. So Emil's app, life lessons from a war refugee who generated $3 billion in sales in 2024. It's an absolute cracker. If you haven't gone and listened to it yet and you need a pump up, I would highly recommend you go back and listen to Emil's app. Now, episode number 5 was my very good friend, Mr. Jimmy Ibrahim, my co-host on the Scouting Australia podcast. He's also one of my best mates. And the episode we ran through, we went deeper than I've ever been with him before on a podcast. And yeah, pretty much deeper than I've ever even heard him talk, even to me one-on-one before. We really, really peeled back the layers. And Jimmy, for any of you who haven't listened to him before, is an extremely generous bloke. He's a great bloke, but he's got serious mongrel in him as well. He's achieved some massive things. He's gone through some massive setbacks and losses, and we ran through all this. In COVID, he lost almost $1 million. So he lost just over $800,000. And it was between different businesses and different ventures and things that he'd been working on for many, many years. Event coordinator on cruise ships, and like they'd pretty much been building themselves up to this point where they could rent hire this ship that had 4,500 rooms and had this huge event on there. And they did it all. They had it all set up. They paid for everything, paid the artists, paid the ships, paid for everything, only for it to then be pulled because of COVID and nothing be refunded. So he and his business partners lost a huge amount of money. He also had gyms, which obviously during COVID, gyms turned to absolute shit. Just lost a lot of money during COVID. And what I really found with Jimmy and unpacking his journey again, and obviously like he had a crazy upbringing as well. Very much had to fend for himself from a very, very young age. But he just had that resilience piece and he wasn't going to give up. And like he obviously had his dark days and his dark moments. But I really think like the way he turned it around and got after it and went hard. And now he's built multiple 7-figure businesses himself. At the time of recording, he had a 16 property portfolio. I think at the moment he's up to like 22, 24 properties. This is recorded November, December last year. This is being recorded in April 2025. So November, December, whatever it was, 2024. So in a 6-month window, he's acquired another 6 properties in his own portfolio too. So he's a gangster. He goes hard. He's a proper G in terms of the way he builds it out, and he speaks extremely directly in terms of his experiences and what he's gone through as well. So I really love Jimmy's episode. The key takeaways is anyone can come back from massive setbacks, no matter how much you lose, no matter how much you are in the dumps, no matter how much you get knocked, how much your ego gets bruised, all of the above. It just doesn't matter. No matter what you've gone through, everyone has the ability to turn it around and create something massive, whether that's as an athlete, whether that's in business, whether that's in entrepreneurship, whether that's a property portfolio. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter the size of the setback. Obviously the only caveat is if you're an athlete and you have a career-ending injury. But other than that, unless it's something that literally physically stops you from being able to do it, anyone can turn things around and create something significant. And sometimes you got to remember what I said at the very, very start from my first episode was the way I always look at any loss, any mistake, even if it's bloody expensive, even if it's over $800,000 mistake, it doesn't mean it's all done and dusted. It doesn't mean it's over. You look at Jimmy now, what he's earning now, what his income is now, what he's generated out of his businesses, where he's built his property portfolio. And he built that 24 property portfolio, whatever it was, in the last 3-4 years. He had one property before that. So from COVID, the turnaround he's had where he lost that amount of money and now he's built that size portfolio, it just shows what's really possible when you set your mind, especially to a comeback. So that's what I really found with Jimmy, was a serious comeback episode, taking responsibility for his decisions, owning that sort of shit, and then coming back, coming hard, and really rebuilding for that next phase as well. One of the other big things Jimmy spoke about as well is making your money in different avenues and from different ventures, and then investing it in something completely different as well. If you can pick, let's say a great asset class like Jimmy, he's got his businesses and then he invests with me for property. So he really likes to create his wealth, create his income, create his wealth from somewhere else, and then go and store it and multiply it in a solid investment asset and investment avenue like property investing in Australia. So I know he was extremely pushy on that side of things and like very, very adamant around that side of things of make your money where you know how to make money and get your income, whether you're a PAYG income owner, whether you're a business owner, whatever it is, and then take that, over, park it into something that is going to appreciate for you and that you can leverage that return. So again, a leverage return, let's say you buy a $500,000 property, you put 100 grand into it, you borrow 400,000, your actual equity in that deal is maybe 100, maybe 120, 30 grand or whatever, but your return is on the $500,000 asset. So the growth is on the 500 grand asset. So you've leveraged into that property to give you a better return on your money as well. So he was super adamant about that. He's made a significant amount of money in his property portfolio the last 3-4 years as well. So really, really cool little takeaways from Jimmy as well. Final one with him as well is getting around the right people and having the right people around you. Again, flowing on to something that has been covered in a couple of these things, these episodes so far as well. Having the right coach or mentor that has been through what you has been through what you're going through or what you're going to go through and can help you navigate how to get where you're going and get to that destination. I think that's really important. You need to have the people that have done it before so they can show you how to do it, so you don't make those mistakes. And what you got to remember is a lot of the time someone's cost is relevant to their value. So don't look at what something cost you, look at what it's going to make you. And if you're going to, surpass in 12 months, 10 years worth of unknowns and hard labors, or even 5 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, what is that worth to you? And this is the thing, you cannot look at what something costs you. You have to look at what it makes you. And that is such an important thing to really factor into the equation of what you're trying to do, how serious you are about what you're trying to do. And are we counting pennies here or are we building for dollars? And that's the biggest thing I think, I can probably pass on from Jimmy's episode. We had a really good, final round out chat around that. And I thought it was really, really powerful with his opinions and insights on that as well. Next up, speaking of another really good friend of mine, Big Jeffy Jowett. I've known that man for quite a while now. Jeffy's title, a $40 million a year business to eating hand grenades. Now, Jeffy, over a 5-year window from about 2010 to 2015-ish, did $100 million in body trim. That was a weight loss brand, a weight loss company. He did exceptionally well out of it. He started Visional Personal Training with his business partner back in the day as well. He built multiple extremely big businesses, multi-7-figure, multi-8-figure businesses, and did some massive rev, during those windows. And we're talking 10, 15, 20 years ago as well, for some of these projects as well. So some of these businesses. So very, very impressive sort of numbers and a very, very impressive individual. Now, he talks very candidly and very openly about hitting rock bottom, about being sidetracked by, going down the avenues of things that are really going to disrupt you. And this is the thing of eating hand grenades. Building something significant, oh, sweet, I've built it, and then he'd go and blow himself up. He'd have massive benders, he'd just blow it all and cook everything that he did. And the life lessons that Jeffy passed on as well, absolutely massive. I think he's around about tied with second episode with Macro Mike as well, the most downloaded eps. This thing's only been out for a few weeks as of recording right now too. So very, very powerful episode. Key takeaways for me from Big Jeffy as well. The dangers of the ego. And the ego and the external, needing the external validation as well, and how hectic that can be and how much that can contribute to blowing yourself up. And he and I spoke very, again, candidly about this thing and the reality surrounding this as well of, doing very well in something very, very young. And we both kind of made the comparison of Jeffy had wild success in his 20s. I was extremely lucky, I believe, to have my, serious success in my 30s, and the maturity difference that I had between my 30s and when I was in my 20s. If I had had that same success in my 20s, I probably would have done the same thing, and I probably would have blown myself up. And so I think it's really important, regardless of where you are, are you mature enough to understand the potential blow-ups that could come and that could happen by you taking your finger off the pulse or opening the periphery too much and getting distracted, sidetracked with these different things and blowing yourself up with things that you shouldn't. And I think running through that with Jeff's ep was a 3-hour plus episode. There's so much meat, juice in that thing. I think it's a really, really great episode. It's probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite as well. One of the other key takeaways, mental health in high performance environments. Again, flowing on from that first one, how do you mitigate that risk of blowing yourself up and going through serious turmoil, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's high performance, all these different things that obviously are all linked when you're building a business or building a career or building a sporting career or whatever it is. How do you manage that, mental health piece in those high performance environments to ensure, again, you don't blow yourself up. You don't eat hand grenades like Big Jeffy. He also went through how he learned the hard way of making fast money versus like a sustainable growth. He was always about, let's ramp this thing to the sky, ramp this thing to the limits. Again, the biggest issue was like he almost didn't understand the real victory because he had achieved it so quickly, because he was exceptional from a marketing perspective, getting in front of camera. He used to be on Sunrise, all this sort of stuff. But what he found was that like, because the rise was so meteoric, he just went absolutely to the moon so quickly that it went up so quick and then it imploded and came down so quick. So he had some massive, I guess, lessons within that as well that he was really, really able to pass on to be able to, assess yourself and ensure you don't go down that same path as well. The final point, the final key takeaway for Big Jeffy was how purpose drives long-term performance. The other way I would probably look at this too is in a couple of weeks, there's an episode coming out with Hattie Boydell, who I mentioned earlier as well. And one of the things that she said to me was changing the way she looks at things and changing words into a positive note rather than a negative. And so for her, that was discipline. And she turned the word discipline into devotion. So having a devotion towards a craft. And when I look at it from like Jeffy, it's a very, very similar thing, because like how purpose drives your long-term performance is, if your pure purpose is to make money, it's not going to work. It's not going to stack. You have to have a true passion behind what you're doing, whether that's as an athlete. Again, I'll get to this in a second, but I have Sayo, the last episode I'm going to cover off here as well. She was an athlete. She's an extremely high performer, had won world titles and all the rest of sort of stuff before, but she no longer enjoyed it. She was scared of doing it and she hated going there. When she had that shift, and again, when Jeffy, he passing on his lessons now. He didn't have it back when he was at his absolute, meteoric point. But looking back on it, and then with Sayer and with Hattie and kind of what they have passed on, is like, you have to have that passion. You have to have the devotion. You have to enjoy it, because if you don't, and you don't have that peace, you're not going to be able to make it. It's not going to happen long term. That's why so many people quit after like 2, 3, 5 years of success. If you don't have that peace, it's going to allow you to retain the longevity in the game. You won't last. And you look at some people, like you look at an Alex Hormozy and what he throws around a lot of the time. Sometimes it's literally the people that stay in the game the longest is who wins, because they outlast everyone else. And unless there's an anomaly that's like way at the top and absolutely killing it. But even then, they may just stay at the top and they may be killing it. They may be super purpose driven in terms of what they do and super passionate. They may be on a different level. But then even if you're coming in second, you're beating everyone else in the pack. That longevity piece will ensure that constant upward trajectory, as long as you're doing the right things, will ensure that you maintain that over the long term. And that long-term performance, especially in something like business, but even something as an athlete, and over the long term, those 1%ers that are going to continually improve you and making something a lifestyle rather than like an on-season and off-season, things like that. That is what, from all these that I've been taking from so much as well, that is what guarantees that long-term success. And at the end of the day, it's all good to have a win, have a quick win, win for 1, 2, 3 years. But can you sustain it for a decade? Can you sustain it for 2? Because that's where the real power is, and that's where the real success is, in my opinion. And I think also the passion that comes from it too. I've almost been in business now for a decade. I've been investing for 16 years. And I still love it. I'm still super passionate about it. It still drives me. I still have purpose. I know what I'm doing this for and who I'm helping from it as well. And I feel like if you don't have that, potentially you're in the wrong career, you're chasing the wrong thing, or you need to have a really good look at what you're doing and how do you bring that in, or can you bring that in to start to implement into your life and into your journey, whatever it is as well. Next up, we had Big Peter Hull, the FitStop founder's strategy of scaling to 160 plus locations in 4 countries. Now, Pete was a great chat. Obviously started his own gym, with his partner, FitStop. Very similar model to like an F45, similar but different. And the culture and like what he built within it really allowed him to build and scale. And again, the lessons and the learnings in this episode, really around like what had happened and then how to preempt those things that blew up, from happening again, is really, really a telling tale. And I really took a lot of value out of this thing. And I found this a very interesting episode because I've never looked into franchising, but I've always been interested just, I guess, in the model and understanding the model. And when he was talking through it and, really breaking down how it happens and how it works, it was actually quite an interesting episode to unpack and to really understand how scaling works, how franchising works, and pretty much, how he broke it down and how he built it out. And then again, the mistakes he made and the lessons that he learned, and then how he reinvented, and rebuilt it from there. And again, during COVID, rebranded as well. All these different little things, being super malleable and changing with the situation to be able to perform, succeed, and keep pushing forward as well. The key takeaways I took away from Big Pete's episode was systemizing for scalability. So it's bringing systems in that allowed something to be replicated at scale to minimize stuff ups as much as possible. And I think like the really cool thing to unpack in Pete's episode when he ran through this was a simple fact that you can do it in any business, you could do it in any career, or whether it was a property portfolio, all these different things. Systemizing for scalability is how they have had so much success. And now these guys are obviously expanding into the US now as well. They got 160 locations over 4 continents, and effectively within the US, they're looking to go really big there. This was an extremely significant piece for them to be able to, again, systemize for scalability, to be able to roll it out at a big number and not implode and not damage the brand, which is really, really important when you go down the franchising route. One of the other key things that Pete brought to the table as well was empowering people through leadership and culture. Now, this is a very, very important thing, especially as you start to build a bigger team, or you start to, again, in his case, franchising, giving other people responsibility, letting them run your brand name, but empowering them through leadership, and empowering them through the culture. So they're replicating what you're doing as a business, where he had so much success. Then they needed to teach people how to replicate that and build that out. And again, that actually came down to selecting the right people from the franchising model as well. So I found that really interesting, and his wife Beck is very instrumental in actually the scaling piece and selecting the next people, to the next franchisees to take those on as well. And it was really interesting kind of unpacking that. What she goes through, recruitment background, what she looks for, how they did it. Obviously, you're always going to have a couple of locations that don't survive forever. You're going to have a couple of people that don't work out. It's the nature of the beast. And 160 people, personalities. Some of them were husband and wife duos, so you're probably talking realistically 250, 300 people here. That's a lot of personalities to try and manage and dissect and get it through. But it was really interesting unpacking how they did that as well. So one of the other cool things as well, building a strong brand identity early. I think that was really, really key in how they were able to scale, and again, leverage that through COVID as well. The final point for me for these guys, was sustainable scaling versus rapid burnout growth. So again, if we go back to Jeffy's episode, very, very similar. Sustainable scaling. So even now when they've entered the US, I think from memory, it was 17%. I'm just pulling it off the top of my head from a month ago. Roughly that amount of sustainable growth year on year. They know that whatever that number was the absolute sweet spot for them to be able to keep building at a sustainable level and things not implode. Now, the cool thing is obviously year on year growth, that multiplies into more and more locations every single year, versus the rapid burnout growth. So again, going to the moon like Big Jeffy did in a very short period of time, typically only ends with one thing, and that's a rocket ship blowing up. So that's what they found. They had those couple of massive years. They had things that didn't work out during that time frame. They've just changed it to that sustainable scaling model and embrace that, and it's working really, really well for them now as well. So that was really, really cool to kind of unpack and go through. Additionally, next episode number 8, we're 3 to go, guys. Avi Khan, the serial entrepreneur's cheat code for starting and scaling 9 businesses. Now, Avi is an absolute gentleman of a bloke. He's out of everyone that's probably come in to interview, he's got to be one of the nicest, if not the nicest blokes, which is interesting because he's got a massive business. He has to cultivate real estate agents, high performing real estate agents. He's got some absolute beasts that have been under him that he has developed and built into absolute animals as well. So it's really interesting to kind of unpack Avi's story, and he's got multiple real estate offices. He had 5 real estate offices. He had 6. He sold one. He's got other multiple businesses as well, and really, really cool journey story and unpacking where he came from, how he got into it, and then how he really excelled and succeeded. And he was a good agent, but he was better. He was even better at developing talent and building businesses as well. And that's where he's loved, and that's where he's kind of built his things. In a big way as well, built his companies in a big way. Key takeaways from Avi's episode is building a scalable business ecosystem. So again, it probably goes back to very, very similar things to Pete of systemizing for scalability, but building a scalable business ecosystem. It's something that can be repeated and built out, from that side, from that perspective, keep it moving forward again without blowing up. And as you can see, almost everyone here from a business side of things, they know that sustainable business growth is where, the real sweet spot is in not imploding. And sometimes in business, the most important thing is not imploding. And again, longevity in the game, like I was saying before, Hormozy talks about it all the time, longevity in the game. Can you outlast everyone? if you have rapid growth and then blow the ship up, no, you can't. You can't, it's so hard to get back, credibility, reputation, all that sort of stuff. It's so important to get this piece right. So building a scalable business ecosystem, creating high performance cultures. Again, I know a lot of his team. We used to buy property from them back in the day when we were very active in Brisbane. They all had it was a very, very strong high performance culture there. Again, they dominated in suburb specific record holder agents they dominated of different suburbs, the highest selling agents in all of them. There's some absolute powerhouse, some absolute beasts that he cultivated there as well. So it's really, really cool. The final key point from Avi's episode as well was finding and empowering the right people. You can train anyone as long as they have a good attitude. And I think like what it was for him, it was actually a really telling episode. I really enjoyed it because I knew that Avi was an absolute beast at cultivating young talent. I actually used to see him and watch him or watch The Office and the different people he'd pull on, and he'd poach people from different agencies and put them into his business, or he'd cultivate this young talent, put him in as a associate or whatever under a great performing agent, and then pop them off in their own suburb somewhere else. And he was really, really good at that skill set, right? Which is a skill set and an art form to be able to select the right people and then also develop the right people. If I look at Emil's story right back at the start as well, Emil is also exceptional at it. He's got multiple high performing agents that are writing $1, $2, $3, $4 million. A lot of them have only been in the industry for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, or they were at another agency for 10, 15 years, and then he's brought them over and then shown them really how to do it and cultivated that energy and that mongrel and that dog in him to go to the next level. Now, Avi's processes were a little bit different, but still the cultivation that I've seen with some of his agents, like one of his highest performers was like a number one agent in this area. It was literally for year on year. She was one of the biggest in the state as well, year on year. And he brought her in, cultivated that talent and obviously, reaped the rewards off that over the long term too. So Avi Khan episode, guys, really, really, I think powerful episode for anyone who's a business owner or even wanting to understand around, developing, cultivating talent. Episode 9, big episode I did with Jimmy and myself. 10 brutal truths I wish I knew in my 20s. There was some absolute gold in this thing. I actually really, really enjoyed doing this episode with Jimmy. It's a punchy little banger, sub an hour from memory. Key takeaways from this thing: don't wait. The cost of inaction is higher than you think, so take action. Don't sit on the sidelines, procrastinate. Take action. Understand money early. Compounding is your best friend. Getting money, again, with Jimmy's story, making money somewhere else and then investing it. And I've seen this with so many different business owners where they make a big hit of money in a short period of time. And then it's all well and good to invest it back into the business. I agree with that. I think it's a good thing to do. But there's nothing wrong with hedging your bets into something else as well. And where Jimmy really saw the light was obviously reinvesting back into assets, appreciating assets that we're going to have, massive growth as well, and kind of hedging the bets against it too. So playing the long game, delayed gratification, who you hang around with massively impacts your outcomes. Risk is necessary, but needs to be strategic. All these different things, guys, this was a really, really good episode. And I think the key takeaways were the things that Jimmy and I really had been through that shaped our journey and that we learnt during the journey. So if you ever want to listen to an episode where you've really got 10 brutal truths that Jimmy and I look back on our lives, especially in our 20s, and go, these are the things that were biggest needle movers, or the biggest things that we wish we knew then that we only a lot of the time found out in the last couple of years as well. So I think a really, really powerful episode for that. And my 2 final points, my 2 key takeaways, I've said this a couple of times now, but only take advice from those who have done what you want to do. Be very wary of who you take your advice from. I personally don't ask for advice from many people at all. I personally actually don't tell many people what I do. I'm very quiet on the subject about what I do, what I've built, all the rest of the sort of stuff for people who I just meet on the street and people I just meet randomly and whatnot as well. Obviously, there's a social presence there, but you've got to be extremely careful of the information that you allow to enter your ears and allow to enter and affect your brain. Because if someone hasn't done what you want to do, but you tell them you're in property investing, or you tell them you're building a business, or you're telling them you're going to do this, if they have no experience about it, but they saw a post one time, or they saw a news article, whatever, all they're going to do is feedback the shit that they don't know, or they may think they know something about it. They might have researched the hell out of property forever, or crypto, or stocks, or business, or whatever. But if they haven't actually done what you want to do, they aren't the person you should be taking advice from. It's as simple as that. So do not take advice from anyone who hasn't done what you want to do, because it's not going to help you get the result you want. Learnings and an understanding of things from a study perspective, an educational perspective is one thing, but real life application and achieving real results is the real predicator of success, and it's a predicator of knowledge, because again, it's all well and good to have the theory component, but the theory component is extremely different from real life and real world application. So you can read as many books as you want, but at the end of the day, you could be the most educated property investor in the world. If you don't buy a property, you will not win. Bob from the pub that buys one property and sits on it for 20 years is going to make significantly more money from you, more money from that deal and from that one property than you'll ever make if you never pull the trigger. So again, take the right advice from the right people, and then implement and take action. Final thing from that podcast as well is don't pursue something you're not passionate about. This is probably one of the biggest things for myself personally that was a massive regret of mine early in my life. I stuck it out. I literally worked on the farm. Yes, it gave me an income. The income wasn't even that high, but it gave me a stable income, which did allow me to buy more property. But I could have gone and done almost anything else and made more money, because I wasn't making much at all. And I could have pursued something else that I was passionate about, even if it was in the property industry, builder, bloody real estate agent, something like that. For me, it was a very, very long time making a very, very average income, and it was something that I wasn't passionate about. I wasn't happy during my 20s, during that building phase. Again, it's lessons learned during this process, sacrifice, discipline, all the rest of it during that. But I kind of wasted it was humbling for me, so I learned a lot out of it, and I really respect the value of a dollar because of what I went through during that time frame. And I probably wouldn't be the person that I am not having gone through that lesson. But I also and I see a lot of people, they sit in something that they just don't enjoy, and then they kind of wonder why they're not happy at 30, especially if they haven't built something as well. So, even if you're in that situation, you don't get out of it, either talk to someone who has gotten out of it, again, someone who's done what you want to do, or make sure you're at least hedging so you've got the ability to make those shifts. Hedge with things like investments or side hustles, different things like that, to be able to start to step out and change or get different qualifications, whatever it is, to go and pursue something you are genuinely passionate about. Now, guys, the last episode we're going to unpack today, I only recorded this with Saya yesterday, so this is very, very fresh for me. This hasn't even been released at time of recording this one. Saya Sakakibara, she won the Olympic gold medal at Paris last year for the BMX racing. Really, really humble young girl. She's 25 years of age. Crazy journey, crazy life with what she's lived, and almost her whole life has been BMX racing. She started because of her brother Kai, and pretty much chased him the whole way through their journeys. And really, really crazy story. So much of what she did was actually overcoming fear. And she even says now she's still shit scared a lot of the time, these massive jumps, these massive things she has to go through, and these scary things that she does. And the really cool thing is what we unpacked during the episode is she effectively is a world champion because a gold medal holder, right? Olympic gold medalist. Because even though she's shit scared of it, she's got the capability, she's got the ability, and she does it anyway. And so it's going through and doing it. And one of the really cool things was unpacking her journey, especially in 2021, where she crashed out of the semifinals in Tokyo, 2021 Olympics. And crashed out of the finals there, had an injury. The next year had another injury. She had concussions. Her brother Kai also had a pretty serious injury in that time frame as well. I think it was 2020 or 2021, with lifelong injury sustained off the back of it as well. Could never race again, and that put a lot of fear in her from that side. And then also when she had a concussion, a 3-month concussion off the first one, and then she crashed again and had another lengthy concussion. And it started making her extremely fearful of the process. And it was really cool what she then went into, and the rewiring of her brain of she began to really fear the track, and she stopped loving it. And then, her coach was talking to her about, her mindset coach was talking to her about, riding the bike means smile. And she was just like, no, it's just, no, it doesn't. And when he first said it to her, she couldn't comprehend it. She couldn't get her head around it. And then the more that she did it, the more she worked on it, the more she did the homework, and she rewired her brain to then be able to, even though she's scared of it, she embraced that side of it and embrace the fear and just understood exactly how she was going to do it. Make a game plan for every single race. And she went on to win, so I think it was 10 world titles. She obviously won the gold medal. She won the World Cup in 2023, 2024, and then won the Paris Olympics in 2024 as well. And she's an absolute animal in the BMX racing world. But it was so interesting to unpack that even though that was her key sport and she's a beast at it, she still had that fear. And yet she just understood she needed to overcome it, got the right people in place, rewired her brain, and then overcame it. And the funny thing was, in those Paris 2024 Olympics, she had 6 races to lead up to the final. So 7 races total, 6 to get into the final. She was scared in every one of those 6 races. She still had that fear, not scared, but she had that fear before she went into each of those races. She was going to crash, jump's too big, all the rest of sort of stuff. And then when she went into the final, she was so sure that she was going to win that the fear just left. She no longer had that fear in her anymore for that specific race. And she just knew she was going to win. She was in pole position. She'd won 6 out of 6 races to get to that point, and she just knew she was going to win. And the crazy thing, if anyone has never seen the interview post-race, or if anyone has never seen the race, she won it was like 2 or 3 bike lengths that she won. And these things are quick races, like they're lightning fast, like how these things are like a sprint. And she won by such a massive distance. And then she was she had so much energy and there was so much raw passion that came out of her in her victory speech after the fact. Anyone that hasn't watched it, I encourage you to go and watch it to get a little insight into who Saya is as well. And it was really crazy to kind of watch, and especially just see that transition that she'd gone through and the power that she sees in it. And even though she's still scared of it, she's still got that fear in the belly. She still goes out there and does it. And she does it to a really, really high level. And that is why she is not only top 1%, she is the top 1. She is the world, she is the gold medalist of the Olympics. So I think that's really, really important to unpack, that even though shit can be scary, even though you might have fear in your belly, whether you're an athlete, a business owner, entrepreneur, anything that it is natural. Fear is natural. We all feel it at different times for different things. Whether it's your first time speaking on stage, or your first podcast, or your final race, or going in and competing and playing, whatever it is, we all have that fear at different times in our lives. But it's pushing through and performing regardless. That is so, so powerful, and that I took so much away from her episode. And I know when the producer and I drove away, after that episode was released, we were both like, that's got to be one of the top, 1, 2, 3 episodes that will get dropped, just because of how much sort of value and rawness kind of came out and came through Saya as well. So really, really cool episode. Some other key takeaways from this thing is, do not quit. You're often so close to that breakthrough point and to true success. The mindset is so important in any high-performing field. Again, like I just ran through, regardless of what industry you're in, what field you're in, what sport you play, mindset is so bloody important. The team and who you surround yourself with is also so important. I asked her because I was curious, being a solo athlete, like an individual sporting athlete, like a boxer or a cyclist or a bodybuilder, all those sort of things. I asked her, how hard is it competing as a solo athlete? And she's like, well, I'm not a solo athlete because I've got my coach, I've got my partner, I've got multiple coaches. She said she got the mechanic that works on the bike. She's got all these people that surround her to make sure that she performs in an extremely high way and to the highest level of her ability. And I just thought she was an extremely humble guest. And she's a world champion, right? She's a beast. She's a Red Bull athlete. She's the best in the world at what she does. And seeing it come through and how genuine she was in telling her story, it was really, really moving. And we really, really enjoyed that episode. And what really came off the back of it. And that final piece that really, for me was a key takeaway was pivoting those negative motivations, to positive motivations. And how do I change this? What are we actually chasing? What's the outcome that we're chasing? How do I rewire that in my brain to make sure it's positive reinforcements and positive outcomes rather than negatives? Because the negatives, you focus on the negatives, you're going to get a negative result and you're not going to get the highest and best use out of yourself. You rewire that to a positive thought and to a positive outcome and a positive goal and what you're chasing. You're going to be able to, for one, chase it a lot harder, but for two, undoubtedly actually get closer to that result and closer to that goal as well. So I took a huge amount away from Say's episode. Again, like I said, extremely humble, lovely young lady. And she's chasing the world championship this year as well. So we got all the support behind Say. I think it was in June or July this year as well, that she's going to be chasing that too. So I hope she gets out there and wins that, brings the gold back for Australia and for herself too. But guys, that is it. That is a wrap from the top takeaways from the first 10 episodes of the Top 1% podcast. I hope you took some great value from this episode, from me breaking it down, the key takeaways that we had, and I hope you can implement them into your own life as well. If you did take some great value out of it, as always, if you can please send this episode on, share it with a friend. Who do you think could take some great value from this thing? Is it a business partner? Is it a colleague? Is it your brother, your sister, your mum, your dad, whatever it is? Who can you pass this on? This is probably an hour-long episode, something like that, with absolute bite-sized pieces of value of each of these different episodes. So I'm sure you took some great value. If you did, please make sure you send it on. If you're enjoying the podcast, you're loving the Top 1%, please make sure you leave us a 5-star review. And if you haven't hit that follow or subscribe button yet on your favorite listening platform, make sure you do. You get the regular pop-ups when different episodes come up. Make sure you don't miss any episodes, because what you really want to do is make sure you're continually moving towards the top 1%. You're doing the 1%ers that are going to build that momentum and build that compounding interest in your brain and that knowledge base,